Just checking my audio, Livy. You hear me okay?
Yes, very strange. Everyone's joining as me. Did I give them the wrong link? Am I giving you the wrong link?
Well, I can see people's names, Livy.
Oh, all I can see is everyone's called Livy. Really off-putting. So that's strange. But I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Oh, actually, no. I seem to be coming up as Livy Drake, but I can see other people's names.
Yeah, there was a few of them like that.
That may be my fault.
No, it may be the link I've given people.
If we said to them,
There you go.
Yeah, but because they're doing it, it's absolutely fine.
Okay, well, this is fun, isn't it? Everyone's me today. I must have given you the wrong Zoom link. So if I could ask everybody to change their name, that would be really handy.
If you click on the three dots beside on your box, you can go in and change your name.
So if I could just ask everyone to change their names, so not everyone's me, because I feel like it's some very strange situation. And I just want to check. So we are on YouTube as well. Okay. Can I ask everyone to change their name to their real name and not my name? So 3 dots at the top right, In some fun game today, I must have given you my Zoom login.
Where do you find this now?
And we've got someone who's
It's my name, yeah.
yeah, so 3 dots at the top, and then you can change it. Oh, this is awkward. Someone's saying there's no 3 dots at the top. So if you go to where you can see your how else can you change this? So if you go onto your screen and then it either says mute or there's 3 dots. Is there another way of doing it if you're not on a? Because I don't know who you are because you say you're Livy Drake as well. So that's off-putting. Wow.
Graham, just looked at Gary Adams on the phone. He said that the last 3 customers have their refugees.
What's just been sent recycling? I don't know what's on the sentence.
Yeah, it'll be on there.
No, we have to do R19, then you have to go on this minute. That's why. Yeah, that's fair.
So just if anyone who's just joined, if your name's Livy Drake, please can you change it? I think I've given you the wrong link in my eagerness to make sure everyone had links in multiple locations. So if you can all change your name away from Livy Drake, because we won't be able to. If you're asking questions, we won't know who you are. I'll put this in the chat, I think, because we're not.
That's great, but I've had numerous people say, speak to Claire. Yeah, we need to find out whether that bridge is safe. If we've had a number of people say it shouldn't have, it's rickety and it doesn't seem safe for anything.
Okay, we've got quite a few people joining today, so I'm just going to keep letting people in. So if you've managed to change your name from Livy Drake, it'd be great to if you pop in the chat your if you're about to, whether you've got an existing food waste service and you're maybe doing an additional one, like you're doing flats or something else, or if you're launching from scratch. So if you'd like to pop that in the chat with your actual name and your local authority, it'd be nice to see who is here today. Just check no one's having any trouble joining.
Sorry.
I'm going to have to take a picture of all these Livy Drakes. It's quite amusing.
Yeah,
Doug, if you're logged on as Livy Drake, you need to change your name.
I've got my name up on there already.
That's all right then, because I didn't. I had Livy Drake.
So right, I'm just gonna we will get started. I think no problems joining. We've got 29 people watching on the YouTube. So let's begin. So I will record this for anybody who isn't able to join, or for anyone whose colleagues want to join, and you'll be able to share it with them. So let's right. Can we just make sure everyone's on mute, especially if you're in a noisy office. Okay. So we've got quite a few people launching from scratch here. some that already do food waste, people who are expanding. So we've got a range of people here adding blocks, flats above shops. Okay, so wide range of people in the room. So let me share my screen. And let's record. Okay, I'm just going to pin myself so I'm at the top. And so if you see me smiling, it's because I keep on seeing myself appearing in the chat, which is amusing me no end. Not as the chat arriving in the room. So that's a bit of fun for today. So welcome everybody to Engaging Residents in Food Waste. So we are going to look at a pilot. I'm going to share what we're going to cover today. I'm just going to introduce myself and my organisation. So we're at the Sustainable Sidekicks do behaviour change, and we work on initiatives. Like I've been working with City to Sea on the refill campaign for nearly 10 years now. We help with communications. So how do you develop your campaign? How do you use behavioral science in your campaigns to have the most impact? And support with research projects. So I've worked with Fife Council on this food waste project. I'm currently working with Cambridge and Peterborough on a research project around fly tipping. And I also deliver a lot of workshops. So I've worked with some combined authorities, engaging the waste, the environmental team and the comms team, bringing them together so we can come up with solutions for some of the initiatives they're looking to roll out. And as the name suggests, Sidekicks, they're our support team. So I've got researchers that I work with, designers, net zero experts, and we can come together and support projects, which is what happened with Fife. So I'm going to share today with you the background of the Fife trial that I worked on. And I've got Sandy Anderson here as well, and he's going to answer questions later. So you can get into some sort of nitty-gritty technical issues and questions. We're going to look at the infrastructure and the routines, so the things that we were looking at when we were doing the research, the communications resources that we used, and as I mentioned, we'll have some questions, and I've also got some links and things to services that you might find useful for your rollouts. So some background into the project. So Scotland has got a target to reduce food waste by 33% by 2025. And in Fife, they are already offering food waste. So the trial was a 3-month trial for high-rise flats. So it was a 3-month trial initially with households, and then we did a 2-month trial to do a doorstep collection to see who would be interested in that and how that would work. We looked at 3 high-rise flats, which included 258 properties. And with these high-rise flats, it's actually quite an isolated demographic. You know, even though they're sort of next door to each other, there isn't really a sense of community. People said they didn't talk to each other. And people lack those visual social norms that you have in a street where people can see when their neighbours have done their recycling or put out their food waste. And obviously in a flat, you've got limited space. So these are some of the issues we were interested in trying to understand. We also were aware it's a lot more inconvenient to carry a food caddy or a bag of food waste, you know, from the 12th floor. So we want to understand how people were going to do it, how they would go about it. Now, the demographic were mainly older, so they were generally over 65 because that was the original criteria for that property. So just and some clarity, it's in Kirkcaldy in Fife, and we were brought in to support the service manager because his team members were on long-term sick, so he needed some support to get the trial moving. which is what we did. So what were our objectives? Well, first of all, to overcome those previous beliefs that food waste services don't work in flats, which is what was sort of muted in the team. To maximize participation in the food waste service, to learn about the barriers and concerns that people had and find ways to overcome them, to trial different communication materials, and to use those insights for a wider food waste service rollout. And actually, we used this to apply to Zero Waste Scotland for funding, which was successful. So that was a great win for the trial. So what research did we conduct? Well, we did qualitative research. So we just check there's no one else in the waiting room. Yes, there are. Okay, so we initially the recycling advisors went and had conversations with people as they dropped off the caddies. They managed to talk to about 98 people. We attended the Tenants Association meeting to see what the feelings were there, what people had to say about things, which was a lot. They were very vocal. We conducted 14 resident interviews, and these were 9 in houses. So I visited people's properties, their flats, and 5 in a local pub. There were also informal conversations that I was listening into while I was around the flats over the 3 days. We also had the Residents Association, well, the Residents Engagement team there. And as a follow-up, I had phone calls with residents after I'd spoken to them to see how things were going, whether they were still doing it, what other challenges. I was getting feedback on the materials that were being put out in the flats to see what was working and what wasn't, which was invaluable. And in terms of quantitative research, we did a survey. We had 60 respondents to that. 40 of those were still using it. 10 had started and stopped, and 10 hadn't started at all. And we also were gathering the bin weights throughout the trial. So what we had was a separate truck going around to collect the food and weigh it, so we knew exactly what was happening. So the average weight of a bag was around 900 grams, and on average we were collecting 45 kilos per week. And we can see here that there were some spikes in the service. We can't conclusively say why that was, but we know week 3 was when we were all there gathering data. We had the residents team there talking to people. So that was one of the big spikes. We also have another spike. Week 7 was when the postcards were delivered. So we did a reminder postcard. Interestingly, the drop in week 8 was when the surveys were given round. So not sure why that was. And then week 11 was when the bins weren't collected at all. But we can see that those are the 3 different flats, that there was kind of, similarities. And again, something that isn't related, but we found that the flats that were most active, which is the green one, block 3, was actually the one that I did most of my interviews in. And one of the challenges that we had was we didn't get enough interviews from the other flats because the person who went around and got so many in the first block that then I didn't have enough time to go to the other ones. So that was one of the challenges of not being there to kind of book in the interviews first of all. So what were the questions and concerns of the residents? Well, when we first went round, so when the recycling advisors went round, it was the fear of rats. It was concerns about the smells. The caddy liners, what would they do about getting those afterwards? And lots of questions about the current bin infrastructure there, because there's issues with the recycling bins have been moved and the residents aren't happy about it. So everything defaulted back to that. We also, once I went round and did the interviews, the issues were the caddy liners breaking. What happens when the supply ran out? This was kind of the first question that people asked me. Questions about the current recycling. And again, the fear of rats came up as something that people had heard other people talk about. From the quantitative research, what we found, the thing that was putting people off was the bags breaking, the bags not being strong enough. So this was a big takeaway from this project, because the bags were the big thing that everyone talked about. So why were people doing it? So what we found out when I chatted to people was the environment was a key reason that people cited. The idea of repurposing food waste, if there was a use for it, that was good. Reducing the smells. So people were very aware of the smells in the chutes. They said they could always tell if someone had fish, and they wanted that to be addressed, which we found out from the caretaker did happen. The chutes and the corridors smelt less. And then social influences. Some people mentioned that family members or friends were doing it. And a few had done it before when they lived in a house. And the ease. So the council had made it easy for them, so why wouldn't they? And I'll explain why they'd made it easy in a moment. From the quantitative research, we found that the environment was a big reason. Less rubbish going to landfill, and yeah, again, food being wasted. Some of the things that also obviously came up was, again, the bit around rats and pigeons, and a few people did mention the bin being kept cleaner. So those personal benefits, the what's in it for me, reasons for doing something. So let's talk about the infrastructure. What did we do? And some of the routines, because this was something we were really interested in. How do people build a routine when you're not just popping outside to pop it, outside your front door? So the bins. So one of the things was about the location. So the decision was made very early on to put the bins as close to the front door as possible. So advice normally is to put them with other bins, but actually the other recycling bins are a long way away from most of the flats, so that wasn't going to work. The design of the bins. So the bins were chosen because they had a foot pedal. And people really liked the foot pedal. The caddies. Now, when we asked people about the caddies, or where looked at where people had put them, it was either on the floor or on the worktop, but mainly it was on the floor. And in terms of the design, someone had actually bought a different color bin. They bought a blue one because they didn't like the brown one. And there's research to show that these bins, they're not desirable. They're brown, they're not pretty. So yeah, it's better color bins. And I'll show you some pictures later. In terms of the caddy liners, as I said, this was a big bit, and I think this is a really key part around the infrastructure. So the caddy liners that the council had were very thin and they leaked. So people were double or triple bagging them to take them downstairs. So that means they were using obviously significantly more of them. People were very unclear to get replacements from. So initially they assumed they would get free ones because obviously for a long time other properties got them, but that stopped during COVID. They had no idea where to get them from in supermarkets. I had to explain that they were with the other bags. So people hadn't noticed them before because this was a behavior they hadn't done before. And there was some resentment about having to pay for bags. And in these instances, we started advising people to use newspaper. So someone had said, they'd asked their friend where to get them from. She'd gone to the library and they no longer provided them. So awareness of, what had been going on before was there. So there was an expectation from the previous service. So how did people use the bins? So what people were doing in terms of their routines was they were emptying the caddies every 2 to 3 days. Sometimes people went a week, but it was similar to their general waste habits, which is they were going very regularly to the chutes. How do they take it downstairs? This is something we were quite interested in. So some people were making a special trip. Some did it for the exercise or to have a conversation with people. So we're talking to people here who were lonely, isolated. They were living on their own. Some people were doing it on their way out. So on their way, to go shopping. and some were doing a mixture of both. A few people had had helpers to do it, so they waited for them. We also wanted to know, did people take the caddy down or just the caddy liner? Most people did the caddy liner, but like I said, they double or triple bagged it. Some were carrying the caddy box down. Someone did it and then chucked it in their car. Someone was adamant that they weren't taking the bags. We wondered whether if it was at the top of the flats, they were more likely to bring it down in the caddy, but we didn't find that to be the case. There was no correlation. It was just people's kind of risk averseness that affected it. So we also ran a doorstep trial. So what we did initially, because people had expressed an interest when I spoke to them, was a 4-week trial with a few selected residents. Then it was opened out to all residents who struggled to get downstairs. So we just put a letter through people's doors saying, would this service be of interest to you? And actually, there was only a few takers for it. We brought the caretakers into this process. So we asked them, first of all, we asked them to trial it, to give us feedback and say whether they were happy to carry on. And that was important, you know, in terms of getting them on side. What we actually found out was that it was actually very convenient for them because they had a routine where they walked around the flats anyway. So it didn't add too much to their round. They just carried a bucket and popped the waste in the bins. And they were all for it because actually they found their bin stores and corridors smelt less. So they kind of were saying, well, this is good. It's good for the flats. And they wanted to do that service. So one of them said, you know, we're here to support the residents, so this makes sense. So what would I recommend and what were our recommendations to Fife Council in the report that we produced? So in terms of the wider rollout for the rest of the flats, ease and convenience. So that was really key. So how close could they locate them to the buildings? Strong caddy liners. So WRAP in their guidance says a 16 micron is a good thickness, and the team have now sourced these. The bin design, so bins with pedals and the reduced aperture. So it was good that there was only a small space, so people couldn't start putting big bags of rubbish or anything else in there. And we only had a very small amount of contamination. So there was some McDonald's wrappers. And we did suggest, you know, if that carried on, that maybe putting litter bins next to it would make sense. In terms of the caddies, I would suggest some non-brown caddies as well. And the doorstep collection. So, you know, it wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't sort of lazy people doing it. So actually, if it's practical and there are caretakers, which there won't be everywhere, we did recommend that as an option. And maybe Sandy can say if it's actually carried on now. So moving on to the communications. So we initially did some desk-based research on what was already out there, what other organisations doing, what fitted with behavioural science, and we drew inspiration from the Re-London packaging for flats guide and toolkit, and I'll share some of that with you. And there's the links so you can use it because it's an open source resource. Another project called Waste It's Mine, It's Yours, which was carried out over social housing projects, and they were very much around engaging the community. And then in terms of kind of making things bright and colourful, we drew inspiration from Hubbub and also bins that have been used. I think this is a Bristol Waste, so inspired by the colourful bins. So in terms of the letters and reminders, we used the designs from Re-London, and we focused on the content being about how easy it was. We also said, you know, congratulations, you're part of this trial, you've been picked specially. So we wanted to give them a sense of pride and a sense that they were valued and their actions mattered. With the reminder postcards, again, it was the focus on ease. One of the things we missed off this, which we added later in, especially to the letters from the research insights, was about the where to get bags from, and that you could use newspaper as well. So this was the great thing about doing that research, is we understood where things were lacking and where we could then make changes, so that we didn't lose people after the first, the bag roll of caddy liners. With the leaflets, this was a Zero Waste Scotland design. And this again, so this will have pictures on it, so visual recommendations. There was the image of the caddy, and then the information about why to do it. Now with this, I would recommend reordering the insights. So the bit about the benefits of recycling food waste, which is about the benefits to the individual, that I would suggest coming first, because the why recycling is very much about do it for Scotland, for the environment. Scotland's got these targets and things. And what we understood from a lot of the kind of communication and when we talked to people is people were doing it also because it made their environment better. And if we want to engage people who aren't necessarily doing it for the environment, we can give some personal benefits. So maybe restructuring that part. With the bin vinyls, we drew inspiration around making them salient, so stand out, catching people's attention. And the designs came from, the design colours came from ReLondon, and we worked with Metro Store, who produced the bins, and they designed these with their in-house team. So we also looked at prescriptive norms, so saying which was the prescriptive norms? Thanks, Ravenscraig, put your food waste here. So we're telling people what to do. We also addressed the drop in the ocean belief, that what are our actions? How are they going to make a difference? So we told them that your food waste is powering Fife's communal heat network, and we've got the flow diagram of how the food waste is actually processed. Now, one of the challenges, so we had 3 different designs, and they were at 3 different locations. But due to the recruitment process, meaning that most people were in the first block of flats, we weren't able to get better insights about what had worked and what hadn't. So that was a bit of a learning in terms of kind of making sure that actually we needed to get equal amounts of people from each flat. In terms of the caddy sticker, we added to the ReLondon design, so using pictures, because icons are processed much faster than words. So we made this a bit more visual. And again, this was designed by Metro Store, and we put these on the top of all the caddies. And what we also did was provided feedback on how much food waste was being collected. So we wanted people to know, 1, that their actions were making a difference, 2, that other people were doing it. And so what we did was we had posters that went up in the flats. We had an article in the Residents magazine, and we put something in the local paper to say that this trial had led to the Zero Waste Scotland awarding the funding. So with this, we were focusing on feedback, so people felt that their actions would make a difference. So addressing that drop in the ocean principle. Collective efficacy, that everybody's actions collectively were making a difference. And when I was calling up someone to tell them how it was going, I said how much we'd collected, which must have been a ton. And at that point, I said, oh, that's like 20 bags of coal. So we started to use that visualization for the demographic, because 20 bags of coal made sense to them. We also used the quotes from the caretakers as trusted messengers, and using the quotes and insights from the residents in the articles to help use them as trusted messengers and relatable messengers for the wider rollout that will be happening soon. So this came from the Waste It's Yours, It's Mine project, which was very much around giving feedback to the the people who are involved in their campaigns. So what were some of the challenges that we faced? Well, there was a delay in the bins, which meant that the letters and the leaflets actually got delivered with the bins all together when we were planning that they would have gone out before to prime people. And what this meant was that no one recalled anything that was in the letters or the leaflets and actually had binned most of them. So that was something to be aware of. The recycling team had limited capacity to deliver things. I think someone went off sick during the project. So where we'd hoped for the reminder postcards and tea bags, which again something that ReLondon recommended, we wanted them to go out a few weeks or a couple of weeks later. There was quite a big delay, so that was again a challenge. So kind of future, we were suggesting using postage. The posters got lost in all the other posters that were in the flats. So we changed that halfway through and put them on the doors so people saw it as they were coming in. So again, this is why it's helpful to be able to talk to the residents. And again, I mentioned the residents being recruited from one block. Funnily enough, it was the block that was actually most active. So we didn't get a chance to speak to people who weren't doing it. And that was one of the challenges. I called up and followed up with people who weren't doing it, but from the surveys, but we didn't really get anyone. I didn't actually get anyone to speak to. So we didn't have, we knew why people were doing it. We had an idea of why people weren't doing it from when we talked to people out and about, but we didn't have a very detailed conversation with them. So what were the recommendations for the wider rollout? Well, in terms of the research and the communications, doing a phased rollout, because there's going to be different size flats with different demographics that are in Fife. So we were talking to an older demographic. What about people with children? How are their routines going to be? Prime people that the food waste service is coming, so more visual reminders that it's happening, letting people know, sending out those leaflets and things earlier. Overcoming people's fears and preconceptions in the communication. So telling people about the benefits, that it's not going to be smelly, that it'll actually make your bins cleaner. Demonstrating the benefits of the blocks of flats and people's households. Providing social proof that others are doing it. As I said, people in flats don't struggle to know what other people are doing. So we need those visual reminders. And making it easy for people to know what's going in the bin with the visual cues. And giving people that feedback that their actions are actually making a difference and they're part of a bigger project. And highlighting that even a small amount of food waste has an impact. And that's one of the things on the posters is we put in, even a tea bag will create this much energy. So giving that kind of those real lived examples of what's the benefit of taking action. So what are the follow-up resources and services for you guys who are starting your services or introducing a new one? So I'm going to be running an online workshop around developing your communications. So I will be there. We'll do a session where we can plan out the comms. We will go through how you can do it for different segmented audiences, what to communicate and when, using behavioral science. So when do you use feedback? When do you prime people? Well, obviously that's kind of suggests. When do you use social proof? When do you use other mechanisms so that actually you can really gather momentum and get people who maybe don't get involved straight away? You'll have two behavioral science frameworks that then you can use for your other campaigns. So great for the comms team for other environmental rollouts. There'll be tiered pricing depending on what type of council you are. So if you're interested in this, if you'd like to pop in the chat a month that would be of interest to you. So obviously people have got staggered rollouts. So is the autumn of interest? Is January? Are you thinking kind of later on next year? If you need support and you want to do a whole team workshop, I can run these online and as face-to-face sessions. So again, if that's something of interest, pop your name in the chat. You can DM me on those. And if you need some research support, so maybe you're going out to one of these different demographics and you really want to understand what are those barriers? Why are people doing it? It's to help your research and help inform how you communicate with people. Then we've got research services and project support. So we were able to develop the marketing materials for this pilot so we could do it very quickly and rapidly. So that if that's of interest, we can offer that. And then in terms of the resources that are out there, so London, their flats recycling package has got lots of artwork which is ready to go. WRAP has got guidance on all sorts of things around rolling out your food waste trial. The thicker compostable caddy liners came from Cromwell, so Sandy's using those. And the bin providers, so Metro Store, Wybona, who Fife are using for the next phase. And obviously there are more available. And for measuring those weights and understanding when you might want to empty bins, Reen offers some software on that. And for more insights on behaviour change, that's a link to a guide that I've developed specifically for local authorities. So that is enough from me. I am going to stop sharing and open up the floor for questions. And I'm going to invite Sandy to come off mute and show himself. And so both of us are open to questions, so technical questions. And if you want to either pop them in the chat or come off mute, we've got about 10 minutes for that. Well, nobody's got any questions. Sandy, is there anything, just while people maybe think about it, anything you want to share, any updates from, is the doorstep trial still going on?
No, the doorstep trial is, no, well, it's not really a trial. We just,
is it, I mean, it's running.
The service just rolled out, yeah. We, excuse me, sorry. We do have a slight delay. We're going to, the first rollout to going wider across Fife is just about to start. Just to give you a laugh, we ordered the thicker liners from Cromwell's, who were brilliant to deal with, and they were en route. Unfortunately, we've currently been delayed by the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. So the boat that was coming from China with our bags on them is now somewhere down, going around the bottom of South Africa, taking the long way around instead of going through the Suez Canal. So we've got a sort of 4 or 5 week delay on them coming in. But we've got some interim ones. Cromwell's gave us some standard kind of 12 micron bags, and we're going to double up what we would normally give folk. And then the 60 micron branded ones will be due mid-July. So barring any further hold-ups like that, we didn't expect that. But no, so apart from that, it's all going well.
So we've got some questions now in the chat. People have warmed up. So Barbara's asking, did you put much on the council website about the trial? So we didn't talk about the trial because, but I'm not sure it's been publicised since then, because the thing is the demographic weren't people who are, necessarily very tech savvy. They were relying, they would go and find their go and talk downstairs to the caretakers. So we didn't put it on when we were trialing it. I'm not sure whether it's been put on there now.
We did do some comms afterwards, after the trial.
Exactly.
It went in, we did it internally then, yeah.
Yeah. How have you managed contamination? So that's from Terry.
We had very little contamination. Like during the trial, we only had one occasion where it had to go to landfill because it was badly contaminated. But at the moment, there's now the bins that are on that Ravenscraig are on a standard route, so that it would just be managed as a normal, because we commingle anyway, so it's food and garden waste that we collect together. So it's now just part of a food and garden waste route. But I've certainly never had any feedback that they're troubled with contamination there.
So one of the things was that because the aperture of the bin was so small, you can only really put either a caddy liner or maybe the odd bit of, like I mentioned, the odd bit of McDonald's wrappers. But that was where we suggested that if there was an issue, to put a litter bin next to it, because there weren't any litter bins in that area, and people did hang outside the flats on the steps. So kind of providing something there would be what we recommended. So Laura's asking, how would you recommend people use newspaper instead of caddy liners? Doesn't this make it very difficult to transfer the food waste into the larger caddy? So the thing is, people haven't got a larger caddy; they've just got a larger box. So it's a larger. Is it 240 litre size bin?
The ones we're going to roll out from Wybone are the ones at Ravenscraig is actually a 140 that's inside it with a small aperture.
Yeah.
They're using the newspaper instead of caddy liner as the standard advice really for disposing of food waste. If you've no liners, then that's an option.
And because one of the things was that it's a barrier because people didn't want to pay. They didn't see why they should have to pay. So the thing with that is that if you did that, then you'd have to carry your caddy down or come down in the lift with it and then empty it. So it's not as convenient if you're heading out. Sarah Ellis, have you had any issues with people using the bins for litter as they walk past, or are they not in locations where there's football? I think that should have been answered now. So as I said, it was very little, and we did say that if there was an issue and for other places to consider putting a litter bin next to it. How long will Fife offer free liners? So they're not offering free liners, and that stopped before COVID. But what they are doing is giving people, they gave people a role when they got started. And as Sandy mentioned, they're going to give people a few more roles just because of the delay with these ones.
Yeah,
right?
just in the first phase, the first 3 blocks we're giving it to. But when we do the wider rollout, we're going to give everyone 2 roles to get them going. But it explains that in the introductory letter that we send them, that we are giving you these roles to get you started. But then once it's underway, then you will be, you will sort of purchase your own, and that we can give advice on where to buy them, etc.
Yeah, and that was one of the insights, from doing that. The research was that people had no idea, and it was the thing that everybody asked me as soon as I walked in the door. That was what they wanted to know about. So, how were in-person interviews conducted in communal areas? So they weren't in communal areas. I went into people's households. So if people were happy for me to go to their houses, I went there. If they weren't, we went to the pub, and we sat in the pub and had a conversation about their food waste habits. So it was just literally somewhere that was just across the road from them. So we wanted to make sure it was somewhere easy to get to. And in these flats, there weren't any communal areas for it to do it. And the community centre had closed down. So the pub was the next best place. So Abby, are the bags provided free? No, we've mentioned that. Have you encountered space issues for the external communal bins? So that's someone who's still me, but yeah, so would you like to?
No. I mean, for the ones we're using, that's a fairly small footprint. So realistically, it's kind of I don't know. I don't have the exact dimensions to hand, but probably smaller than less than a meter by a meter. Just it's basically just a housing for a 140 or 240 litre bin. So there was room for that at all the blocks that we're going to use them in.
And the other we were the recycling issue. There is a whole other webinar, but we'll carry on here because this is another related one. What external capacity for food waste is needed for household flats? Were there any issues with smells locating the bin near the entrance? So people don't. So they only get one caddy, the small one, and that they take downstairs because of fire risks. People, it's not that you have the bigger one outside like you would with a household, and when we were doing the doorstep collections, it was literally you were told they had a very specific time. I think it was between 9 and 11 on a Wednesday morning. You pop your caddy out and then it gets collected again. So it wasn't that people were leaving them outside, and there weren't any complaints about smells from that bin because it was being emptied. It was only a small bin and it was collected once a week.
We were also exchanging the bin as well.
Yeah, you exchange it, so it's always a clean bin that they had.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether, well, probably now would be the time because the weather's actually finally warmed up to see whether there are any complaints. But we rolled it on October, so it wasn't.
We haven't had any complaints, but I think Zero Waste Scotland do recommend that as part of the bidding when we bid for money, they recommended as part of that to arrange a process for cleaning the bins so you could get them. I think Perth and Kinross rolled out something similar, and they used a private contractor who was going in monthly to kind of wash communal bins that were used for food waste and put them back in the case.
Great. So, did you do any sampling? Did you do any sampling as part of the trial, or is it? Did you do sampling as part of this trial, or is it as it goes to a service? Just wondering if that is an option, or be useful to find out what if residents are still putting food waste in their rubbish bins. So the question is, did we do a sample of the general waste to see the proportion of food waste in there? We did.
No, we didn't. We did sampling
before
in 2022, and it was sitting at our blue bin that we use for landfill was sitting at somewhere around to 30% for
30%.
food and garden waste that it contained. But it's harder for flats. It's a different mix that you tend to get from flats as well. So, but we haven't. But we do know that there's still people are still using the communal bins. But I'm not sure that we would need feedback from their caretakers, etc., as well, to see if the chutes are still odour free. They were during the trial.
So, what sort of participation levels do you have? So, Sandy, what's your overall rate for Fife? I couldn't remember this for food waste.
We can't really calculate it because we commingle.
Yeah.
So we commingle food and garden waste, and it's about, I think it was around 10 or 11 kilograms per household per week.
Yeah.
But I don't have. You're not going to do analysis on it because you don't really want to be raking through food and garden waste all mixed together to try and work out rates. Yeah. So sorry, I don't have that data.
No, and that was one of the things we know who was, or we had an indication of people who were doing it.
But in terms of the weight that was coming out, we're getting about 0.5 kilogram per household per week.
Yeah.
With the number of households compared to the final weights that we were getting, that's what we were lifting.
And we know that when we did speak to people who weren't doing it, some of the reasons were that they didn't have any food waste. I only eat pies was a favourite one, and that they only had tea bags and things like that. So that there were people who felt it wasn't worth them doing it. Were there any trial blocks, social housing, and were already issues with wider recycling compliance? Do other recycling improve too? So there's a mixture.
It was a mixed demographic in every block. At one point they've been completely social housing, but obviously in the past some of them were sold off. Yeah. So with a real mixture of social housing, private tenants, and owners.
And one of the things, so everyone wanted to talk about the recycling service because the recycling bins have been moved from being close to each flat to them being at a more central location, and lots of people who did do their recycling were very disappointed because they were older people. It was a struggle for them to get there. So some people had actually stopped doing their recycling and were very happy that this food waste service was so convenient so they could do something, because they were disappointed that they couldn't. And one of the issues they were having was actually other people were fly tipping their bins with their black bag waste. So there was wider recycling issues in that area that came up a lot. But as I said, that's probably a whole other webinar.
Yeah, and we are still dealing with that as well.
Yeah. How does the doorstep collection work? Does the caretaker use a slave bin, and do the residents just leave their caddies in a hallway? Hopefully I've answered that one now. So they just carried a small bucket round, and yeah, it was a very specific time. What is the overall participation percentage? Where did we have that?
I think we just kind of covered that. I mean, yeah, we know what we lifted weight wise, but I don't know how many of the individual flats took part.
So we've covered this as well. So the bins were cleaned not by the caretakers, but they're cleaned by the teams when they're swapped out by the crews.
Yeah.
Does your food waste go to an AD plant?
Yes.
Yes. That was a good one. How much of a reduction did you see in the normal waste in bins? We didn't. We weren't doing. We were just looking at how it was actually used. Were there barriers from management companies on space for the food containers? It's a council property, so that was not an issue. Did you introduce an opt-out service for those with a caddy already? Nobody already had a caddy, so that didn't apply. Is the kitchen caddy 7 litres or bigger? I think it's
7 litres.
7 litres. Yeah, it's
yep.
not. It's a small one. Did you see a better quality of DMR as a result of the food waste trial? So again, I think the answer was we didn't, because that was being collected with the other DMR. There wasn't. Oh, actually, no, it didn't apply because their bins are collected separately, and that's a whole separate issue.
We also don't collect DMR. We collect cans and plastics and paper and cardboard separately.
Yeah, and that was contaminated, but that's for another reason. Are bins locked with a specific key or card system? These ones we decided not to.
No, we didn't. But I know there are products on the market. I'm speaking with Future Street, who produce big belly bins for litter, but they're also producing a compost bin for flats, and theirs is worked with like an app on your phone that you can use to get into it. But for these ones, no, we didn't use that.
And also, just in terms of the demographic, an app on a phone would have been a barrier to all the,
absolutely.
The demographic. So we decided, we talked about it at the beginning, but decided it wasn't a priority. Question here, so something here is a comment, I think maybe it's that people tend to, there's less contamination, I think, if you've got a small caddy. I think that's the comment there. In Lewisham, we use 5-litre caddies. We've done cleaning. So in South Gloss, they get residents to use any plastic bags, which is not done here. Because they don't want any plastic. That, I mean, definitely that is an issue, isn't there, in terms of the quality of the compost. Where at the food bin taken? Right, we've done that one. Is anyone providing free food waste bags after rollout? I think that's maybe a question to anybody on the call who is our local authorities still providing. Maybe we could have a show of hands or something. People are answering this now. One roll. How do you manage one roll per year? Okay. Okay. Can you post a link about the behaviour change workshops that you have done? Yeah, you'll get all this follow-up. Would housing associations pay for the food waste bins for their flats, or is this the council's responsibility?
We give them. We are responsible to provide them for everyone.
Yeah, there might be some social housing organisations on here. Maybe Nigel from Metro Store, you work with social housing. Maybe you could pop in the chat what you're doing with them. Do all your flats have caretakers who can assist with the service? No, it's probably the answer.
No, all our very big high rises do, but once you get, as you come down, then they don't all have one. Yeah.
So Sophie's saying about the problem with plastic bags in digesters. I think the issue is comes down to the quality of the material that goes out in terms of for farmers, because then it's got microplastics in it. But there's an issue here about getting people to put their food waste in it and making it easy for people. So that's a challenge. Are you giving free tips to people on how to reduce food waste, and did you see some results? So at this point, we were trying to get people to use a food waste system who've never used one before. So we were focusing on one behaviour at a time. And I think this is an important thing to remember, is that if you're trying to get people to do something new, you don't want to overwhelm them with lots of things. So one of the things about giving people a food bin is suddenly they become aware of how much food is being wasted. So then once they've nailed that, then you can start giving them recommendations of how to reduce food waste. But at this point, we wanted to get them to use the service. Yes, the slides will be sent out. How many 140-litre outside bins were provided for each block of flats, assuming they were emptied weekly? There was just one. So it was one outside each block. And there was a week when they were emptied twice a week, but that was only happened once. And the team were kind of going around and monitoring it, because you had the caretakers there. That helped. But I think probably the REEN software would be something that would help with monitoring that. And maybe if someone's on the call from there, they could mention something. Right. We did one 140-litre per 9 flats, but would like to know what 5 or other worked out, mainly to make the bins not too heavy. So we did it with 1 block per block of flats, so that people didn't have to walk very far, and that was kind of important. Have we got to the end?
No, still a few more.
God, how do you deal with missed collections?
No, we don't miss any bins.
Well, there was one.
No, we did have an issue over the winter, actually. because the bins went onto normal routes. But in the winter, we actually go from 2-weekly to 4-weekly collections for garden waste. So we did have a bit of an issue. But all of our high rises are in the bigger sort of urban areas in Fife where we've got lorries in those every day. So it's not too difficult for us to redirect a lorry to go and pick it up. So.
I found that compostable sacks are far more expensive than plastic sacks, so perhaps households should be encouraged to use those. I think we've covered that in terms of there's an issue around the quality of the material that comes out of it, the digestate. When it comes to the time that food waste bins need replacing, would Fife Council be covering the cost, or would they expect managing agents to cover the cost of replacement bins?
We don't charge. So whenever any bin runs out, we replace it for free because we're so nice.
Okay, well, we've got to the end of the questions. So thank you very much, Sandy, for your insights. And thank you to everyone else for all of your questions. You will get the, oh, we've got something here. Okay. We've got something here, some recommendations here. So if you do, yeah, if you're interested in what people have been saying in the chat and the technicalities, if you hit the 3 dots, no, where is it? There's something where you can request, there's 3 dots in the chat, I think, and then you can keep the chat, so then it will get dropped into your computer, and I'll also circulate it as well, so that you get it with the slides and the recording, and all of the links to the resources that are available to you. So thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who impersonated me today. That was a novelty to see my name appear. So I must have given you all my login details or something weird. But yeah, thank you very much, Sandy. And also a huge thank you to Re-London for providing their resources, because it really helped us just to hit the ground running. And also thank you to MetroStore for the team who provided the graphics and everything. So thank you, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Livy. Speak soon.
Cheers. Bye for now.